Ann Brown. A gunman wearing an Iraqi army uniform killed 2 American soldiers in northern Iraq today, according to the U.S. military. They were the first American soldiers killed since the U.S. officially ended combat operations in the country last week. The White House will roll out a series of proposals to jumpstart the economy tomorrow. In addition to business investment tax breaks, President Obama will call for Congress to pass a $50 billion infrastructure investment. And Chicago Mayor Richard Daley says he is not running for re-election after more than 20 years in office. Daley says the time to move on is now. For more on these stories, visit foxnews.com. Glenn Beck returns in a moment, but first, Brett previews special report. Hi, Brett.
Hey, Betty Ann, coming up, White House officials insist that new proposed package of spending and targeted tax cuts is not a stimulus package. They concede it would increase the deficit, though. Britt Hume is here with analysis. Join me at the top of the hour for special report. Now back to Glenn.
Back now with our special edition of the Glenn Beck program, the second day of a one-week crash course on what we've learned so far this year. Tonight, we're focusing on the radicals that have influenced and are continuing to influence our president and his administration. Before the last break, you all heard about the Weather Underground and some of its members. Now, a close look at their blueprint to destroy America from the 60s and why it still matters today.
I believe this document explains the reason for many of the actions that we are seeing from this administration, because I can't make sense of it. This document is from June 18th, 1969. It's the manifesto from the Weatherman. Now, I have to tell you, if somebody would hand this to me in the street and say, hey, Glenn, you've got to read... And I would also think this is ancient history. But if you don't know history, you won't know where we've been, where we are, or where we're headed. This manifesto, when you read it, sounds crazy to the average person. It does. But as you read it, I know I read it in bed one night, and I kept waking my wife up. Honey, 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 listen to this. It sure sounds an awful lot like the things that we're doing. And there are people in and around this administration who not only wrote this, but they still buy into the philosophy contained in these pages. Let's list off a couple of recurring themes in this manifesto. They attack capitalism. They call capitalism in this imperialism. And they often speak about the struggles it causes. And they use any struggle as proof of hopelessness. They repeatedly talk about how you have no chance to succeed in this system. Michael Moore writes about this in his book. No chance. For example, they say, the masses will fight for socialism when they understand that the reform fights for improvement of material conditions, cannot be won under imperialism. So in other words, make sure you tell people they can't make it. These guys don't buy into the American dream, which is funny because most of them come from well-to-do backgrounds. Then another recurring theme in this is redistribution of wealth. Your stuff. Your stuff is not really yours. Quoting from their manifesto. Listen to this. All of the United Airlines Astro jets, all of the Holiday Inns, all of the Hertz automobiles, your television set, your car, your wardrobe, all ready to belong to a large degree to the people of the rest of the world. Then there's class warfare, pit the rich against the poor, and liberation warfare, which is there's the oppressor and the victim. And we've got to save everybody by getting the oppressor. Then there is the globalism part of it and indoctrination. Indoctrination, he says, they write this, we will only reach the high school kids who are in motion by being in the schoolyards on an everyday basis. How do you get into the schoolyards on an Hey, here's a good idea. Why not teach? Then they also say this, an interesting thing they talk about in this is being clandestine. To win a war with an enemy as highly organized and centralized as the imperialist, the capitalist, will require a clandestine organization of revolutionaries. So in other words, don't let anybody know you're a revolutionary. Now, do any of those goals at all sound familiar? Seems like we might be stuck in the 1970s. You have to hate capitalism, redistribute the wealth. You can't make it on your own. The rich are evil. Workers of the world unite. But there's more disturbing parts of it. Ask yourself, which way are we headed? Now, who are they using to achieve their goals? In this manifesto, they talk about it and they lay it all out. It's really quite fascinating. There's a few people that they say you have to have. One, you got to grab the youth, students. They know they must have the students. I think we got that one locked down in the universities. Then they have to have the labor unions. Workers of the world unite. What was it that Andy Stern said? Oh yeah, that was the exact quote. Workers of the world unite. It's not just a slogan anymore. They have the labor unions. I want you to know the people who wrote this are 6 degrees separation from the president. You wouldn't have these people standing right next to you. But what about the people standing right next to the president? What if they stand right next to those people? Is that far enough separation? These are the friends of this administration. These are the people in the administration. These are the organizations that are tied to the administration. You have Andy Stern, SDS, Workers of the World Unite. You have Van Jones, a communist. Mao lovers, Ron Bloom, Barrel of the Gun. Anita Dunn. You have Weather Underground, Jeff Jones. Where's Jeff? Here's Jeff. He worked with the Apollo Alliance. What does the Apollo Alliance do? The Apollo Alliance worked on the stimulus package. He's now in the government of New York advising them on how to spend it. Hugo Chavez praising Mark Lloyd at the FCC. They all think the same way. How is that? What are the odds? That they all think that America is the bad guy, the imperialist, that capitalism is over. They all believe in redistribution of wealth, and yet he's surprised. Now let me ask you this. Do you know one person that was a member of SDS, or is a member of SDS today? Do you know one person who is an admitted militant communist that called recently for the overthrow of the United States? Do you know one? Do you know one person that wants to dismantle the free market brick by brick? Do you know anybody? One that was part of a non-repentant group of terrorists who blew up the Pentagon and routinely bombed and shot up police? Do you know one person that hates the Constitution? One that disagrees with the Declaration of Independence? One. Do you know one? He knows all of them. This is an undisputed fact. So you have to make a choice. This is either the most unluckiest streak of job hires of all time. Oh, what do you mean? Another radical? Oh, gee, how could we be? Or it could be that this is the mindset that this president wants to associate with. These are the people who helped shape his life. His parents, they were communists. His mentor was a communist. It's all he knows. He's simply surrounding himself with like-minded individuals. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you the 2 questions. Did you read Dreams of My Father? Has anybody in the press asked this one question? What was the dream of his father? Why did his father leave him? To pursue Marxism and communism in Kenya. What was the dream of his father? Now you surround yourself. He surrounds himself with Marxists, and they deny it and say, oh, as but I don't buy that. Let's go with Ronald Reagan. If Ronald Reagan, and he did, if he did the same thing, he brought in small government policy people from the Heritage Foundation, and he surrounded himself with the Heritage Foundation, would anybody believe that, oh no, that's just, of course not, it's intentional. 3 days ago, I started with this chalkboard. And I asked you, I said, after you hear this, you have to make a choice. You have to make a choice. Because it's no longer reasonable to say that this is all a coincidence. You have to make a choice. What you're seeing Is it the intentional destruction of the free market system into redistribution of wealth, into globalism, into big government and Marxism, into class and race warfare? Is it intentional? Fundamental transformation of America? Or is it this? But boy, they just keep getting it wrong. America, you can bury your head in the sand at our peril. Or you can draw a line in the sand.
Next.